Level 1. The Courier. You are 19. The Tumen River is narrow here, you could throw a stone across it, but at 2 in the morning it might as well be an ocean. The water is cold enough to stop a heart, and you have maybe 90 seconds before your body starts telling you to panic instead of move. You go anyway. A bundle wrapped tight against your chest, sealed twice in plastic, heavier than it looks, heavier than it should be for something this small. You don't ask what's inside, you never do. Cigarettes, sometimes. Phones, sometimes. It isn't yours, and it never was. That's the whole job. Carrying something you're not allowed to be curious about, across water that doesn't care who you are. Nobody picked you for this tonight. Someone picked you decades before you were born. Your family's file, thick, sealed, kept in a provincial office you'll never see and could never request to see, carries a Songbun rating, the loyalty-based caste classification the state has sorted every household into since the late 1950s, built originally to separate the loyal from the wavering from the hostile, and never dismantled since. Yours sits low, low enough that a river at night is one of the only doors still open to you. A cousin with a better file sits behind a desk somewhere and has never once gotten his shoes wet for a living. You climb the far bank soaked, shaking, alive, mud to the knees. Behind you, a spotlight sweeps water you've already left, searching for someone who is no longer there. You don't know it yet, standing there dripping in the reeds with your lungs burning, but there are 10 ranks stacked above this river, rising all the way to a room in Pyongyang with no name on the door, a room built in part to buy the loyalty of men who will never once get their feet wet, who will never smell river mud, who will never understand what 90 seconds of held breath actually costs a body. Tonight you don't know any of that. Tonight you only know the cold, the weight on your chest, and the fact that you made it across. You don't tell people where you were last night. You never will. Not your mother, not the girl 2 houses down who thinks you work nights at a mill. Silence is the first uniform you ever wear, and you put it on before you're even dry. The bundle gets lighter the moment it leaves your hands, but you don't feel that until later. For now it's still strapped to you, and you're still moving, fast and low, along a footpath that isn't on any map because it was never meant to be found by anyone who'd draw one. The path knows you. You've walked it enough times that your feet find the roots and the loose stones without your eyes needing to help them. What crosses with you tonight is almost never anything glamorous. A few cartons of cigarettes, still smelling faintly of the shop they came from. A handful of Chinese-made phones, the kind that can pick up a signal from towers across the border and let a person hear a voice from outside the country for the first time in years. A small illegal miracle, wrapped in a sock so it doesn't rattle. Sometimes batteries. Sometimes nothing bigger than a memory card, small enough to swallow if it comes to that, though it never has. Not for you, not yet. The goods that will one day become someone's imported watch, someone's shelf of foreign cognac, started their journey the same way you did tonight. Small, plastic wrapped, carried on a back that isn't supposed to exist to the men who'll profit from it, 11 levels up a ladder you can't see the top of. There's a price for the border guard who didn't see you. There's always a price. It isn't written anywhere, isn't collected by anyone in a uniform who'll admit to collecting it, and it isn't optional. You pay it the way you pay for air, automatically, without negotiation, because the alternative isn't a lower price, it's no crossing at all. Your songbun doesn't just decide who runs the river, it decided, long before you were old enough to understand what it meant, whether you'd ever be allowed to rise past this. A family with the wrong grandfather, the wrong province, the wrong decade of history behind it, stays a family of runners, generation after generation, the file simply copied forward. A family with the right one gets to stand on the other side of the transaction, waiting, warm, dry, never once required to learn what the river feels like in the dark. You don't resent the river itself. You resent what decided, before you were born, that you'd be the one crossing it while someone else's grandson never has to. Somewhere south, in a market you've only heard described in whispers by people who've seen it, someone is selling what you just carried for 10 times what you were paid to carry it. You do the arithmetic sometimes, lying awake. It never comes out in your favor. That's where you're going next. Level 2, the stall keeper. You are 24. The market opens before the sun does. You've learned to recognize its sound before you can see it. The metal shutters going up in a ragged, uneven chorus, the murmur of women counting change under their breath, the particular hush that means an inspector might be walking the road today. This is a Jangmadang, one of the state-sanctioned markets that has existed, officially, since 2003, when the government finally admitted what had been true for a decade already, that people were going to trade whether it was legal or not, so it might as well be taxed and watched instead of pretended away. You pay your stall fee every morning before you unpack a single item, coins counted out and handed over before your hands have even warmed up from the walk-in. It's small, it's also non-negotiable, and it buys you exactly one thing: the right to stand here today. Not tomorrow, today. If the political wind shifts, if a crackdown comes down from a provincial office that answers to an office in Pyongyang that answers to no one, your stall disappears overnight, and so does the fee you already paid for it. Nobody refunds you, nobody apologizes. You sell what crossed the river last month, and the month before that, and every month since you were the one crossing it yourself, before your knees started aching in the cold water, and someone decided you were more useful standing still. Batteries. Cheap electronics wrapped in cloth to keep the dust off, a phone here and there, sold quietly to a customer who already knows to ask without asking, eyes flicking sideways before the price is even mentioned out loud. A woman 2 stalls down calls this a grasshopper market, set up fast, gone fast, hopping to wherever the inspectors aren't looking this week, never staying anywhere long enough to be worth the paperwork of shutting down properly. She's not being poetic, she means it literally. You've packed up a full stall in under 4 minutes before, goods back in sacks, table folded, gone before the inspector had finished his cigarette 2 rows over. Permission here isn't a right, it's a rental, and the rent resets every single morning, whether or not you slept the night before. Level 3, the officer who looks away. You are 29. You wear a uniform now, though not the kind people imagine when they picture North Korean authority. No medals, no parade ground posture, nothing that would look impressive in a photograph. You work for the Ministry of People's Security, and your beat is the market itself, the same rows of stalls you once might have stood behind as a customer, buying a phone from a woman who watched your eyes the way you now watch everyone else's. Your job officially is to enforce the rules. Unofficially, your job is to decide which rules get enforced today, and on whom, and at what price. A stall owner who's fallen behind on her unofficial contribution finds her goods suddenly confiscated for irregularities nobody can quite name. A stall owner whose current finds you walking past without breaking stride, without even a glance down at what's spread across her table. Nothing about this is written down anywhere. Everything about it is understood by everyone. The way weather is understood, you don't need a forecast to know when to bring an umbrella. You didn't invent this system. You inherited a version of it that predates you by years. Informal taxation running parallel to the formal kind, collected by men in your position all over the country, none of them reporting to each other in any organized way, all of them reporting in some indirect and unspoken way, upward, into a current that eventually reaches somewhere far above your pay grade. The strange thing is how ordinary it feels from inside it. You're not a smuggler. You'd never call yourself corrupt. Not out loud, not even to yourself most days. You're a man doing a job in a system where the job itself is built on a debt nobody signed for and nobody can ever fully pay off. The debt of being tolerated, extended daily, revocable without notice, to everyone, at every level, including you. You go home most nights without thinking about any of this too hard. Some nights you do, and on those nights you understand something you'll carry all the way up, if you ever get there. Everyone above you is doing exactly what you're doing right now, just with bigger numbers, and further to fall when the tolerance runs out. Questions here are not refused, they are remembered, filed away, and answered later, on someone else's schedule. Level 4, the Moneylender. You are 34. They call people like you donju, masters of money, a word that didn't exist before the famine of the 1990s and now describes one of the most quietly powerful informal classes in the country. You didn't inherit this position from anyone. You built it, loan by loan, in the years after the state's rationing system collapsed and people like your parents learned, the hard way, that survival meant trading whether or not the state approved of it. You don't run a stall anymore. You fund the people who do, and the people who cross rivers, and the people who move goods between provinces on trucks that officially don't carry what they're actually carrying. You are, in every functional sense except the legal one, a bank. You take deposits from people who trust you more than they trust any state institution. You extend credit at rates you set yourself. You collect on what's owed, and you remember, precisely, down to the exact figure, who owes it and for how long. The officer who once took his cut from a stall 2 rows down now calls you for a loan when his own expenses outrun his salary, his voice careful in a way it never used to be around you. That's the moment you understand you've crossed something real. The state used to be the only lender in this country, at least on paper. Now the state itself, in places, quietly borrows from people exactly like you, and pretends, for everyone's comfort, that it doesn't. A woman comes to you needing capital to move a shipment north, more than she's ever moved before. You don't ask what's in it, you ask what she can put up if it doesn't arrive, and you watch her face while she answers, because that tells you more than the collateral does. This is the first level where you stop being watched and start being needed. It's not the same thing as being safe. Debt runs both directions, and you're about to learn exactly how far up the chain that's true. Level 5. The Trading Company Representative. You are 39. You have a desk now, and a title, and a company seal that makes everything you sign look like ordinary commerce to anyone who doesn't already know better. Your firm is registered, licensed, connected quietly, through channels nobody writes down, to a department of the ruling party that never appears on your letterhead, never appears anywhere your name does. On paper, you export minerals. Off paper, the ships and trucks moving under your company's name carry considerably more than what's declared on any manifest a customs officer will ever see. In August 2010, an American president signed an order, Executive Order 13551, naming entities exactly like the network you now work inside. Companies facilitating the procurement of luxury goods for the country's elite, sitting alongside arms trafficking and counterfeiting under the same umbrella of sanctioned activity. You've never read the order yourself. You don't need to. You live inside precisely what it was written to describe, day after ordinary-looking day. The unfamiliar term that lands on you this level is front company, a business that is entirely real, entirely legal-looking on every document that matters, and entirely built to give cover to something else underneath it. You didn't choose the phrase. An investigator somewhere overseas chose it for you, in a report you'll never see, about a company you helped run, sitting at a desk that looks like any other desk. Before we go further, if you've made it this far, comment what you want next. Hit that like button right now and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We upload every single day. You used to move goods across a river in the dark, soaked to the bone, afraid of a spotlight. Now you move them across oceans in daylight, with paperwork stamped and signed and filed, and somehow, strangely, it feels less honest than the river ever did. Level 6. The Trade Officer Abroad. You are 44. Your posting is overseas now, an embassy trade office in a country most people back home couldn't find on a map if you handed them one. You carry a diplomatic passport, and with it, a kind of invisibility that no rank below you has ever had. Goods and cash moving through channels that foreign customs officers are, by international convention, not permitted to open, no matter what they suspect is inside. In 2021, after North Korea severed ties with one Southeast Asian country and pulled its ambassador home in the wake of a diplomatic rupture, reporting out of the region described something telling: trade workers and intelligence-linked personnel who simply stayed behind, still working, still in contact with handlers in Pyongyang, because the mission itself was never really about the embassy building or the flag out front. It was about people exactly like you, embedded and useful long after the formal relationship ended, quietly continuing the only part of the job that actually mattered. You understand, at this level, something the runner at the river could never have imagined standing in that cold water. The same act, carrying something across a border you're not supposed to look inside, never actually stops. It just changes altitude, and changes clothes. He waded through freezing water in the dark, afraid of a searchlight. You walk through an airport in daylight with a diplomatic seal that makes the question of what's inside illegal for anyone else to even ask you. Being trusted this much costs you something specific, something that doesn't show up on any ledger. You can never fully go home, not to the country, and not to the version of yourself that existed before this posting began. You call your family on lines you assume are monitored, and you say nothing that matters, and you tell yourself, most nights, that this is a small price for what you've been given. It isn't small, it's just the first installment, and the bill keeps arriving quietly, on schedule, for years. Level 7. The Finance Officer. You are 49. You've come home from abroad, promoted into something with no public name, a provincial finance node feeding into one of the state banking institutions that exist specifically to move this kind of money, quietly, in volume, without drawing the wrong kind of attention. In 2010, when the US Treasury sanctioned 2 organizations tied to this exact network, it called them, in the plain language of a press release, key components of Office 39's financial system, the institution generating hard currency for the country's leadership since its founding in the 1970s. You don't work for that bank itself. You work for what feeds it, the tributary rather than the river. Your day, if anyone outside this world ever saw it, would look almost boringly bureaucratic. Ledgers, wire instructions, meetings where numbers are discussed in flat, careful voices and nothing else is ever said out loud. The romance of smuggling, if it was ever there at all, has been entirely engineered out of your job by now. What's left is accounting, money in from a dozen fronts you've never visited, product moving out through a dozen more you'll never see arrive, and you, sitting in the middle, the only person who can see both columns at once, and is trusted never to say so to anyone, including your own family. You've learned the specific loneliness of this altitude. You are never present for the thing you make possible. You never see the river crossed, the stall opened at dawn, the pouch carried through a foreign customs line. You only see what those things become once they've turned into numbers on a page in front of you, stripped of the mud and the cold and the fear that produced them. Money in, product out. You stop being able to explain your job to anyone, including, some quiet nights, yourself, staring at the ceiling doing sums you'll never write down. Level 8. The department head. You are 55. You oversee an entire product line now. The manufacture and export of narcotics. The movement of counterfeit currency so precise it once earned foreign banks' own nickname, the supernote. And the funding stream that keeps an entire tier of the regime's elite in imported cars and Swiss watches they never have to explain the origin of. You report to almost no one. Almost no one reports to you either. Not on paper, not in any way that could be traced back cleanly. That is, by design, the entire architecture of your safety, built layer by layer over decades. It is not enough. In December 2013, Jang Song-thaek, the second most powerful man in the country, uncle to the leader himself, a man who had controlled vast portions of the state's economic apparatus for years and was widely assumed untouchable, was stripped of every title he held in a single week, tried before a military tribunal, and executed days later. The charges named factionalism, corruption, an economy allegedly driven deliberately toward catastrophe. What the case actually demonstrated, to everyone at your level and above, was simpler and far colder than any of the official language. There is no rank at which proximity to power stops being a liability that power can decide, overnight, without warning, to erase. You don't discuss this with anyone. You don't need to. Everyone at your altitude already understood it before it happened, and understood it more completely, more personally after. Command at this level is total, and it is also exposed in a way the runner at the river never was, not once in his life. He risked a spotlight and a cold current. You risk a phone call you don't see coming, on an ordinary afternoon, from someone whose voice you recognize. Power stopped being armor a long time ago, somewhere around the level below you. Up here, it's just a wider target standing in better light. Level 9, the one who buys for the family directly. You are 60. There is no market stall at this altitude, no ledger with your name quietly attached to a column, no product line you're responsible for defending. There is only appetite, specific and itemized, and your job is to satisfy it without delay or explanation. In 2008, ahead of a leadership birthday, more than 200 vehicles reportedly crossed a bridge over the Yalu River from China in a single procurement effort. Cars, jeeps, vans, brought in not for any market, not for export, but simply because they were wanted by someone whose wanting doesn't require justification. You have run smaller versions of that same errand yourself, more times than you could count. Watches, cases of cognac, furniture sourced through attachés stationed in European capitals since the founding leader's own era, a network older than you are. None of it moves through a company you'd recognize as a company. It moves because you make a call, and the call is answered without question, the same day. And then, above even you, there is the room. It was established in the 1970s, kept deliberately without a public name on any door, run for decades by whoever the ruling family trusted most completely, for years, by most outside accounts, a member of that family itself. Its entire reason for existing is owed, in a strange and almost circular way, to the outside world. In 2006, the UN Security Council passed Resolution 1718, banning luxury imports to the country's elite as a response to its weapons program. The room didn't spring up despite that ban. In its modern form, it thrives precisely because of it, built to get elites what sanctions say they cannot have, which is exactly what makes their loyalty to the family that gets it for them so absolute, so unbreakable, so far beyond what any salary could buy. You stand near that room now, close enough to understand what 19-year-old you, wading across a freezing river in the dark, could never have understood standing dripping in the reeds. The summit was never a rank, it's an absence. Everyone below the top can be traced, a ledger, a company, a face at a stall, a name on a manifest. The person at the actual top exists mostly as what's left after every visible thread has been cut, absorbed, or made to disappear, not a title held. A vacancy, worn like a title, filled by the last person still alive who everyone else is too afraid to replace. You did not climb to the top of anything, not really. You climbed until there was nothing left standing between you and the emptiness the entire system was built, from the very first level, to protect. A plain sedan crosses a checkpoint in Pyongyang just after dawn. No one searches it. No one asks what it's carrying, because at this height, the questions stopped applying levels ago, stopped even occurring to anyone standing close enough to ask. Somewhere behind that checkpoint, a river is still being crossed tonight by someone 19 years old, cold to the bone, certain this is the whole world. It was never the whole world. It was the first rung of a ladder built, floor by floor, over decades, so that the coldest, most exposed people carry the weight, and the warmest, most protected room never once has to explain where anything came from. The car turns a corner and is gone. The city goes on around it, mostly unaware of either end of the ladder it's standing inside, the river at the bottom, the room with no name at the top, and everything human stretched thin between them. Some things climb all the way to the summit and still never have a name.